Joining us now, who has his own traveling fan club with him everywhere they go. And I've seen this firsthand. Everywhere they go, everywhere Air Force One lands when Sean Spicer is with the president, people swarm him on tarmacs. I've never seen anything like it. I saw it yesterday. A friend of mine sent me a photo of Spicer with these people surrounding him. I mean, it's Sean. You have quite the fan club. Every time you land, I've seen it myself. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Laura. Actually, my wife's from Nashville, so I think it was just family members.
I saw that. It's like, Sean, let's do a selfie. Oh my goodness.
Well, you know what? Look, and let's be honest. I appreciate it. It's very nice, but it's not. I think they're using me as a conduit to the president. I think these are individuals who have fought for and believe in everything that the president's been doing, and just my position is one that I think just has a degree of visibility, but they're coming up and saying thank you on behalf, to the president for the agenda that he's pursuing. So
okay.
you've got to make sure that you're always grounded. And I think let's not kid ourselves. This is not about me. I think people aren't coming up to say hi to me. They're calling up, and a lot of times, frankly, some of the stories that you hear of just saying, a woman handed me a letter last night in Nashville. I can't thank you enough what the president's doing. And can you ask? I mean. And so I think you've had a very high degree of fame over the years, and you know that a lot of times it's about you, and sometimes it's about the issues that you're talking about and pursuing. And so in my case, I'm well aware of the fact that anytime someone's come out to me, it's an extension of them wanting to thank the president for his agenda or for his vision or something that he's already taken care of.
And Sean, you and I have talked about this, but you're always brought down to earth when you just have to get the kids in the car to mass on Sunday. I mean, then then you're just back to the routine, and your kids to your kids, you're just dad or mom. I mean, that's just that always brings you right. Back to earth.
Or the wife just saying, "Hey, the dog needs to get walked," and or you have to clean up after the dog. I get grounded very quickly at home. That makes
two of us. So let's talk about a couple of issues. We got the Obamacare issue, but the issue yesterday with the wiretap and the House committee coming out, then the president last night with Tucker Carlson essentially teasing us again about evidence that might come out in the next 2 weeks. Could you shed light on what the president was referring to there?
Well, I don't. Only to the extent that I'll say that the president has been very clear from the get-go, from the time he sent that tweet, that there's information out there regarding activity that occurred, surveillance activity that occurred during the 2016 election, and we've already seen some of this. The point that I would give to your listeners is one of the issues that gets forgotten in the whole discussion about NSA Director Michael Flynn, who left the president asked to move on, is the only reason that Michael Flynn's name was ever put in the public domain is because he was part of some degree of surveillance. It is illegal for an American citizen to be surveilled in that way and for their name to be revealed. And so the question is, and that's just one example, and I'm just making the point that there's a lot of stuff that's out there regarding the 2016 election and the surveillance that occurred. The president has been very clear that over time, in the next few weeks, I think more evidence and information will be presented to show exactly what he meant. But one of the things that we want to be clear is that the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees have an obligation and have talked about their desire to get to the bottom of this, and they're beginning that process. The Department of Justice asked for an additional week to get the information together that they were requested by the department to get. And so I don't want to get ahead of the investigation and the review that's going on.
But is the evidence, but what I'm saying, Sean, is the evidence going to go directly to the quite, it's quite incendiary claim that President Obama himself ordered a wiretap when, Nunez was kind of throwing that off yesterday. So there's no evidence of that at all.
Well, and I think we have to be clear that the president, is referring to President Obama's administration, and wiretap was in quotes, as you pointed out in the lead up to this. The president's been very clear that, wiretap to most Americans doesn't mean actually as it did back in the 70s and 80s when you would, unscrew the bottom or the top of a rotary phone and insert a device that would then monitor. That's sort of the days gone by when technologically that's how it occurs. But I think the president was speaking very broadly. That's why it was in quotes about the degree of surveillance that occurred during this time.
Did you guys, or did he, as far as you know, make an effort to find out how many individuals inside the government would have access to the unmasked names putting a foreign phone number in a database, coming up with various phone numbers in the United States, however it's done. There is a finite number of people who have access to that. Have you asked someone at the Justice Department or the FBI to provide those names or provide that information, which would shed light to the unmasking of Americans' names question?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and one that I think we want the process to play out on.
But you guys could ask for it. That's my point. You guys could ask for it.
I think we could, and I think part of the issue right now, Laura, is that, as you know from your background, that if we get into a series of what we're asking the Justice Department to do or to not do, the first thing the media is going to do is jump all over us and say that we're impeding it or attempting to influence an investigation. So we're very careful about this, which is why the President was clear that he wanted the House and the Senate to look into this situation and not to sort of be accused of manipulating data from a Department of Justice that he could have potentially said, make this happen. I think, as I've noted from the podium a couple times, the press wants it both ways. They want to be able to say, why don't you just go ask the Department of Justice? And then if we ever talk to the Department of Justice, it's, that was inappropriate on another matter because you were attempting to influence something. So it's amazing that we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't.
The budget question. Of course, Mick Mulvaney was on television this morning pushing the president's priority in the budget. I thought he did a terrific job, by the way. But the invariable criticism, which we heard, was that this is dead on arrival. It was one of the MSNBC, I think it was Katie Tur, who asked the question of Mick Mulvaney. Said, look, is it going to get through the Senate? Mitch McConnell has said he's not going to be in favor of this. So you get hit by the right, and then you also get hit on the left of individuals who are saying you're cutting Big Bird and EPA. So where do you go with this?
Well, I think we're going to take the message to the American people, and that's where I think you'll see members of both sides of the aisle respond. The fact of the matter is that, look, we're running up on $20 trillion of debt. This president committed to a budget that does two things. One is prioritize defense to make sure that the country's kept safe, and number two is not add a penny to the deficit, which is consistent with the budget that he is submitting today. And I think for most Americans out there who are struggling, who haven't seen a wage increase, who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay for their health care or save for their children's college, that's consistent with them. This isn't about supporting something or not supporting. That's a fake choice. I mean, it's literally like telling a working family out there who's making, $40,000 or $50,000 a year that somehow you've chosen not to go to some fancy steakhouse. It's not a question of a choice. It's a question of a priority. And so it's not that they can't go or that they don't want to go. It's a question of they look at their budget and their family's priorities and say, our number one priority is to make sure that there's food on the table, that we clothe our kids and ourselves, that we pay the bills to keep our house and our mortgage going. And then we'll figure out what we can save for maybe a vacation or a holiday or presents for the family. But you don't start doing the add-ons until you take care of the essentials. And I think this president has prioritized the essentials. So
is this a starting point for the negotiation? For someone like a McConnell, he's already made his views known on some of this.
That's right, and I think that by law and by Constitution, the Constitution lays it out very clearly how spending works, and it is the job of the Congress to appropriate money. But I think the goal of the president and the executive through his budget is to lay out the priorities and what he believes the government needs to operate. Now, ultimately, we will continue to work with them, but I think it's a signal, it is a blueprint, and it is a roadmap of where the president wants to take this country and his priorities. And so now it's up to Congress to either agree with the president in terms of the priorities of protecting the nation, or to frankly say to the American people, we have different priorities and here they are, but we need to make sure that we're establishing clearly what the president wants to do and how he wants to do it.
And Mick Mulvaney made the point today that this is only about discretionary spending. This does not deal with entitlements, which would have to be dealt with later on. Now, the issue of Obamacare, Ryan Care, whatever we're calling it now, this is clearly a pivot point for the administration. We had Ryan on the show. We had Vice President Vice President Pence on the show a few days ago. Did I keep saying Trump? I don't know why. Vice President Pence a few days ago on the show. Let's listen to what Rand Paul said this morning.
Nobody was running on, oh, we'll give you half as many subsidies, half as many taxes, and instead of paying the individual mandate to the government, you have to pay it to the insurance company. None of us ran on that. No conservative is for his plan, and so I think his plan's dead on arrival. My hope is it never leaves the House, and my hope is that we separate repeal from replace, because, there's some great ideas that could have bipartisan support.
Your reaction to what Rand Paul said, that this was not, in fact, what either the president campaigned on or most Republicans understood was going to happen.
Well, this is a plan that we've worked on with the House and the Senate. I think we have to, especially from a conservative standpoint, look at several things. Number one, this is the vehicle that's going to repeal Obamacare. There's a way that we have to do it through this arcane process called reconciliation, which is how they set it up in the first place. And the problem that exists is that because of Senate rules, and that's how they jammed it down everyone's throat in the first place, there are only certain things you can do through this legislative rules process in terms of undoing it. We are taking full advantage of that to get rid of Obamacare. Then the question comes to priorities. Number one, this is the first time that we've reined in an entitlement program in Medicare, so we've got a per capita cap. This should be unbelievably good news for every conservative out there that's worried about entitlement spending growth. Number two is that if you are a self-employed person, if you run a small business who has to go out on the individual market and get your health care, you know that you don't get the same tax treatment that everyone else who gets their insurance through either a government program, Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE, or the 175 million people who get it through an employer system. So right now, if you if you go to work every day and you get health care through your job, then you nor your employer gets taxed on your health care. But if you own a small business or you're self-employed, either as a bookkeeper or you sell stuff on eBay or whatever you do to support yourself, you have to pay you have to use after-tax dollars to buy your health care. So ironically, the engine of job growth, the entrepreneurial spirit that we all champion as Americans, is actually tax disadvantaged under the current system. This system actually starts to level the playing field and recognize and support small businesses and entrepreneurship, which I think is something that conservatives should frankly champion.
So why does the Heritage Foundation, Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity, Rand Paul, Tom Cotton, a lot of folks in the conservative medical world, why are they against this? I mean, if this is like the best thing since sliced bread, it's not full repeal though, Sean. It's not. You have 30% penalty that goes back to the insurance companies. The subsidies are replaced by the tax credit. You still leave all these mandates in with the under 26 and pre-existing conditions, which Rand Paul said will not drive down the price of insurance or overall health care because those mandates are still in place. The only thing that drives down the cost is true competition, which comes in what Tom Cotton says is the mythical phase 3, which if you have the 60 votes in phase 3, then why don't you just do it right now with a full replacement and separate it from repeal? Sean. What happened to Sean? Okay, somehow we lost him. God, I was asking such a good question, too. All right, we'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show, try to find out what happened to Sean, and be right back.
The Laura Ingraham Show.